Hello and welcome to episode 6 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. With me as always is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
He was on time. It's all good. Before we go anywhere else, let's talk. I'll take Miles. Miles, Lil Legend Studios, putting out loads on his Patreon and still taking commissions as well. Don't forget that. Teaching you how to do all the fancy tricks. I had a little chat with him. I've got a painting project going on at the moment, getting some sneaky ways of doing some non-metallic metals, and Neil's helping me out with it. We had a little chat before we recorded tonight, so I'll hopefully be putting up some posts on the Twitters about how to do that, and utilising both Neil and Miles on that one. See if it works. See if I can do it. And
yes, see if you can.
And it can't be too slow. It can't take me too long, because I won't be doing it if it takes me too long. But yeah, you can go and check.
Non-metallics aren't great for speed.
No, but there are ways. The way Miles was doing his, which we've discussed, there's some cheats in there, but was very useful. And you can find those kind of hints and tips and tricks on his Patreon if you want to go there, and check him out on Facebook. If you want a commission, you can hit him up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
I will take Element Games. As we know, Element Games are a great one-stop shop for anything you need hobby-wise. What's on the latest pre-orders that's coming out for
this is recorded the Friday before, so I don't know what's on the Saturday of release, but we've just had some stuff for Age of Sigmar for their new campaign system. We've got the Death Guard, the Imperial Guard coming out soon, the books for 40k. I don't know if they're getting any new models.
Yeah, and Shadespire's coming out soon as well.
Shadespire, 14th, pre-order 14th, which is going to be about 34 quid on that first week of release. You get 8 very good models. I've got a copy of this. We're going to talk about it on Fanatic Cast, podcast that I do, sister podcast to this one. And that episode will come out that week because Shadespire looks awesome, but this isn't that podcast for that, so... But yeah, you can go and get all your hobby requirements there, and of course check them out for events as well. It's a big Age of Sigmar event going on there this weekend, 100 players, something like that. So all good fun.
Definitely.
All good fun. So Neil, what have you been up to? Painting hard?
A little bit of painting here and there. Nothing too exciting. Nothing to report of note. Trying to get into some interesting bits and pieces that I want to post up on Instagram, but hopefully I'll get them done pretty soon.
Good. More of the same from Neil. That's what we like to hear. So it turns out I'm just putting my house on the market. So we've had a week and a half of some fervent activity around here in relaying some lino in a couple of rooms to make it look better, and fixing some bits and pieces, and clearing out the spare room. So I'm storing stuff all over the place at the moment just to get it out, to hopefully encourage people to come and buy it. So if anyone wants to come and live in sunny Sussex by the sea, I have a lovely flat available. So in fact I had to put loads of my painting stuff away, and I'm like, I need to keep this stuff out. I need to do something. So I'm just...
Did you put it into like a travel set, or did you just literally pack it away into boxes?
No, I've still got it out in the front room at the moment, but it can be packed up. You know, I can leave models out on the table. I don't think anyone really minds a house that's lived in per se, but things like anything that's not my paints and whatever have had to go somewhere. I've got so many toys that I need to start packing up now, you know, because even if it's for moving in a couple of months, I'm like, I've got just toys on shelves and things. It's like they need to be somewhere stored where they're not going to get damaged. It's like, oh my word, that's a lot of stuff. And then, be packed to move as well. So I might as well start with some of it now. It's all fun. But I got my Blood Bowl team. Yeah, people have seen me posting pictures up, and that's where I'm going to be trying that non-metallic metal. We're going to do it in a slight difference, but we shall see how that goes. Because I want to get back on with the Knights, but I kind of don't want to get all the airbrush gear out, when we're possibly having people coming around to view the place. It's not
it's difficult, isn't it? It's like how much stuff do you how empty do you make it look?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily empty. I just don't want mess. I don't want it too cluttered because it does put some people off. And then it's like hoping for a quick, someone offers us roughly what we want pretty soon, so I can relax a little bit and not have to worry about people coming around and viewing the place. But yeah, it's all part of the fun. Hopefully in the long run,
moving house is so much fun.
Yeah, and in the long run, if we're looking at a place where where we actually have a space that is, I can painting and recording, which means that the missus doesn't have to leave the front room when we're recording, that kind of thing. Because, as I've said before, my flat's not the smallest in the world, but it's not particularly big. And if the missus wants to be in the front room and actually doing anything, then she'll have to go in a different room to watch TV or what have you. So, unfortunately, it's just the way it is. So, fingers crossed for that one. So my time has been limited. I can feel myself falling behind target on my 365. So, hoping to get a good few hours in this weekend and looking to try and find some times when I can get proper painting sessions in.
It's fun, isn't it? Because if you can sometimes have, like, I find sometimes as an off, you think I'm not going to get much done of an and you have a really good session where you sit down and get a good 4 or 5 hours done.
Yeah, we've been so busy on weekends as well, just like weirdly busy. Sometimes not feeling like you've done a lot, but potentially this weekend there's a chance to sit down if I can sit down for 4 hours each day, that shouldn't be too, like, technically tomorrow I don't have a huge amount to do, so might be able to get a good 4 hour session in. If you do that once, that's 8 hours. That's a week's in the bank kind of thing, And it all adds up. As you say, it all adds up. But yeah, that's all good. Should we move on to the new stuff that's been going on?
Yes.
Let's start with Forge World releases. So we've had some Aquilon Terminators. So it's, again, following the procedure we've been seeing of getting everything out for one force. We're still on the Custodes. We got the Aquilon Terminators, the Infernus Fire Pikes, a nice bundle for a Legio Custodes army, just one click, Orion Flyer, Grav tanks, little tanks, jet bikes. Yeah, that's not bad actually. Then you look at the price, and it's 1,133 quid. You're like, if you bought that in bits, you probably wouldn't balk at it.
Yes, yeah, when you see it in one big lump, it's like, wow. Yeah,
absolutely. And the Terminators, you're looking at those Terminators, what is it? £49 for 3, as we said before. It adds up.
And it's like anything, if you buy things in piecemeal, you don't really notice the cost, do you?
No.
So if you go to an event and you buy 3 Terminators and then you order one of the vehicles online and that comes 1 month and you work through it, before you know it, you've got everything, but if you buy it all in one go, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at that army they put out, it's got an Orion gunship in it. That's £275. The assault dropship, sorry. So, and it's 605 points. So, it's pretty big. It's not. That's a sizable force actually for that price. It's just a bit of a whoa. That's a price, but that doesn't stop people clicking on them for sure.
Yeah, I wonder how many of those packages they've sold.
It's quite funny when they do the big ones. Apparently, it's quite surprising how many people do click on them. But, if you've got the disposable income, if you're going to do it anyway, some people are happy just to drop it all and go. And
was there a saving? Like, how sometimes they.
I wouldn't know on this one.
Slight saving.
I wouldn't know. I can't even remember how much the big tanks are, but they're not cheap, are they? The transports.
Because sometimes it worked out that you almost like got an upgrade or something for free, didn't you?
I wouldn't. Forge World tend to be quite good on their bigger deals to give something. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit off that, but I wouldn't have thought it's a huge amount.
No.
I mean, there might not be, to be fair. You'd have to go in, but, when
even if it's enough that it buys you a transfer sheet or something.
Yeah, it all helps, doesn't it? But if it's stuff you're going to buy anyway, people moan that they put, GW used to have their one-click bundles with no saving whatsoever.
Yes,
and it's like, well, why? Well, it doesn't take them much time to put that bundle online. And if you are going to buy it, because it's a lot of the time they used to be like one of everything as well. Allow people.
I remember
to buy
when
it.
do you remember when they did a 40k release? This was, I think, a couple of maybe 3 editions ago, and they did a one-click bundle for everything that was the new, like the new rulebook, the new limited edition rulebook, and everything they did, which was all the limited edition, that was one-click bundle. And I remember I bought that because I just remember going online when they used to release stuff at like 6 o'clock on a Friday or something, I think it was. And I remember going oh yeah, I want that. I'm just going to click that and buy that. Because it was just easier to do that one click than it was to sort of consider each purchase.
The joke was, it's a bundle that saves you clicking your mouse. Yeah, whatever, If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But they have got better in terms of offering a little bit of discount on those. But yeah, there's a couple of those, and they're cool. And we got the Orion Assault drop ship, and we got downloaded rules for it as well. Rules download. So I don't know if you've looked at this.
I haven't. No.
There's been some real interesting chat on this. There's been the usual reaction to the Custodes stuff, and then I'm talking to one of our guys who plays a bit harder. He's like, yeah, it's not worth it at all. It's a super heavy flyer with front armor 13, side 12, rear 11, 7 hull points. But it's got some really cool stuff on it. So we've got heavy blaze cannons, 2 of them, 2 Lastrum bolt cannons, and 2 heavy bolt launchers. Decent weapons, all 3 of them. Nothing special. It's not going to put out shed loads of damage. Extra armor, armored ceramite. Yep, cool. Eclipse shield. So that is a flare shield. But, here we go. This is a flare shield as normal. And if a shooting attack originating in the front arc is a glancing hit or a penetrating hit, then the Orion immediately gains the Shrouded special rule against all subsequent shooting attacks.
Oh.
Which is kind of cool. I mean, it can't jink. It's just super heavy, I'm pretty sure that's right.
So it's basically giving it a little bit of a... If it's taking a lot of fire, it suddenly it gets a little bit better at maybe avoiding a few shots. Yeah,
it represents that shield taking effects. And it can't be used in combat or against destroyer weapons. That's cool. I just quite like it, really. It's
cool when they do a little unique little rule or piece of wargear like that, isn't it? It just makes it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got the macro area strikes, so it's basically got a 4-up save against being able to be intercepted. And there's a few other little bits and pieces around that from Inferno as well, which is really useful. And then when it comes in, it's got the grab backwash that the the skimmers have, land speeders, -2 to hit in the fight phase. And it sounds like it's got a lot of rules, and it has. But it's access ramps on the rear, so when you do drop off, you're turning your rear probably to something. It's got a capacity of 24 models, which may include a single Custodes Contemptor Arculus Dreadnought or the Galatus Dreadnought, which count as 10. And then I believe Custodes are all bulky, so you can carry 12 Custodes or a Dreadnought and 6 Custodes.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's 605 points.
That's a lot of points when you look at the value.
Well, it has to roll to come on the table. So you might not get it turn 2, you might only get it turn 3. Even if you get it turn 2, it's got to get somewhere and land. Yeah, you can deep strike it, but it's got to then land. And then the troops get out and kill stuff. Yeah, okay. But you've also put however many hundreds of points in troops in it as well.
Yes, yeah.
Which, if they don't drop off then, they're not getting off for another turn, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
I actually think and I see why. I think it's one of the ones where it can create an imbalance in a game, in terms of, if you can deal with it, then you're going to win the game fairly easily, and if you can't deal with it, it will be more of a struggle. But I think there are better ways of getting your troops up the field. I think just the basic transports are more effective for the points, because they're on the table, they're doing something from turn 1. And they don't have to drop all they're not dropping in one place. It's a big piece of kit as well. So you can easily stop it being able to hover in your territory. And have a wall of wounds in the way. There are things you can do that can help deal with it. I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not saying you'll necessarily take it out, but you can control what it's doing. As I quickly talking to Joe at the club, he was like, yeah, I don't think I'd take one. Then talking to Dan at the club, he's like, it looks amazing, I'm going to take one. you know, and I think that'll be it really. I think it's one of them.
It's one of them. If you really love it, you're going to take it.
Yeah, it's like the Thunderhawk. It can do stuff, but it's not going to do it every time.
I think that's probably something to be said for all super heavy flyers.
Yeah.
To be honest, because super heavies are very powerful, but I think when you combine it with a flyer, it loses a lot of its punch.
If it doesn't turn up to turn 4, and some armies like Alpha Legion going to make that more difficult. You know, if you're taking the command, the thingy support Rhino tank thing HQ, you can negatives on reserve rolls, things like that. If that doesn't turn up to turn 4, you're not getting out of it till turn 5. Yeah. Then that could be,
and you've got a lot of points to make up for that lack of having stuff on board.
Even a 3,000 point list, you're going to have like a minimum probably of about 1,100 points in that, 1,200 points. That's stuff that's not on the table. So, yeah, when it comes on, it can make a dent, absolutely. But you can, you got to balance that up a bit, and you just got to play to that as well. But yeah, I certainly think there are more effective ways, but maybe ones that don't look quite as cool. So I'm cool with it at the end of the day. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I like the look of it. But again, it's one of those things that if you want to, if you're looking for a cool transport for your custodes, then yeah, you're going to probably get one. But if you're looking for that more, if you're looking for a more looking at the abilities of it and points to
the effectiveness,
you're going to say, I don't know. So it's how you want to build your force, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got all the issues of super heavies that I've gone over before, but it's cool. It's cool at the end of the day. I think it'd be awesome to see. And then Fortrod dropped a real surprise on us: the Imperial Arvus Lighter.
Yes.
So this was a bit of a shock. They've been retooling it apparently, and the amount of reaction it's got. Maybe they knew how popular it was. I know
it's funny because I think it's been around for such a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think
maybe it's almost got a nostalgia thing to it.
I think there's possibly a bit of that. I think maybe a new 40k it may have gained a new role, and certainly I know Joe at the club was looking at having a lot of these for a militia list, I think. But yeah, there's a lot of people showing a lot of interest in it, which is quite strange for a thing which is quite expensive for its role on the table. 66 quid.
Does it look vastly different from the old one, or have they retooled exactly the same?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty much the same.
I seem to remember some sort of probe or something coming out the front of it, which I can't see.
I can't remember for the life of me, to be honest. It's been that long since I didn't even look at it that closely the first time around, to be honest. It's let me just have a little look while man looks stuff up whilst talking on the radio. There's another one for you members of the Church of the Wittertainment. I'm looking at pictures online. It doesn't look to be very different at all. It looks to be pretty much the same.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
There we go. Yep, but it's cool. It's another option that's back in, and it gives us hope that some of the other options are maybe going to be getting their new release, their re-release soon as well, which I think is a big thing.
Yeah, and if you think it's been retooled with new moulds, you can bet if you're going to buy that, it's going to be lovely and crisp and clean.
Yeah. But maybe it means they've sorted that out. They've got back on track. So maybe there's hope for other things that we haven't seen for a while. Dreadnought Drop Pod. Who knows?
That's a major one, isn't it?
It's a major one, yeah. Not in 40k anymore, but certainly in 30k.
Yeah.
Cool. Should we move on to Black Library? We've got the Black Shields audio coming out, which I must admit I forgot to order, so I'm going to have to get on that probably as soon as we finish recording, because it feels like a while since I've read a new Heresy story. What we're buying up the ones like Talon and things like that. But yeah, can't wait for that. So just in case you weren't aware, that's coming out. And talking about library, there was some pretty huge news. So this is something that people have been clamouring for a long time, and something I didn't think I'd actually ever see. But Black Library is now available on Audible. And for those who don't know, Audible is a paid subscription service where you, I think the lowest fee's $7.99, $7.50, something like that. And for that price, you get a token which can be used in exchange for a book or part of a book. So Lord of the Rings, each of the Lord of the Rings books is split into 2. So there are 6 Lord of the Rings parts, but most Black Library books are going to be 1 token per book. And those books in retail would be £22, something like that, maybe a bit more, depending on the book.
What, in audiobook format?
Yeah.
Same price as the book. It's £30, isn't it? £30 per.
Yeah, it depends on which one it is, as well. But yeah, you can get Black Library books for audiobooks in full format if you're buying the right ones at $7.99. Yeah, and you can be on various different tariffs. That one is $79.99, I think it is. Could be wrong. It's around there. It's a similar price to Netflix, and you get 1 book a month.
Oh, cool.
Or you can go for 2 tokens a month and all that jazz. And then while you're a member, you can also purchase books, and sometimes they do sales. So obviously it's not just Black Library. They've been doing lots of stuff. Things like the Dresden Files I've listened to. Or Pratchett's on there. Apparently Harry Potter, read by Stephen Fry, is supposed to be brilliant. And they're all on there. It's a big, big service. And we're getting, the first set of releases was Beast Arises went up, all that, with a few other 40k, but some of the new stuff like Carrion Throne's already gone up there. So it looks like they're going full in with it. They're not just testing the water or anything. They're committing. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? I'm really glad they're doing that sort of stuff because it opens up more options.
Well, I know a lot of people. Yeah, I know a lot of people who resubbed immediately.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I let mine go because there's too much going on and whatever. But now it's like, actually, yeah, that Black Library book that I put on the shelf because I'm not going to get around to read it for a while? Well, actually, it's not too big. It might only be 8 or 9 hours or 10 hours on an audio book. Yeah, I can listen to that in a month. Sorted. While you paint, while you're doing hobby, while you're driving. Loads of different places you can listen to and absorb those books. So that's really cool. Really cool. And, I can't wait. No Horus Heresy yet. It'll be interesting to see if they put it on there or not. I don't know how Black Library are approaching this. But it's a really cool service. It's really good to see. So, yeah, go over to Audible. Oh, I'm just gutted. I did say that I was trying to get an affiliate scheme. I think possibly because I re-signed up and asked for it straight away. I haven't got one. So, for those waiting for that, I do apologise, but I haven't got one. But if you do want to help someone out, go and check out baddice.co.uk. Ben's running, the guy who runs Blood and Glory, and he has got an affiliate scheme. So, go and get your free book through him. Because that's pretty cool, and you get to keep the books as well, even when you, unsubscribe, which is really
pretty good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. I've still got loads of books from ages ago, things like Ready Player One, fantastic. So yeah, go check that out. Where else have we got to? Oh, painting.
Yes.
So we mentioned it a little bit later in the show.
Painting there.
Yeah, it's a funny little thing, really. But GW have a painting app now that's available. And it's very simple. It's an app where they have videos of their painting tutorials, which is cool, which you can search by, and they're, pretty sure that's going to expand as they go. I say videos. I'm thinking of Shakespeare. They've got pictures. So you click on a Gene Steeler Acolyte Hybrid, and it's got 8 different boxes, one for gunmetal, one for warm yellow. You click on it and it gives you the paints that we use to do it. And also a little information bar, how to apply those paints, the basic standards. So if you can paint well, you're not going to be getting a huge amount out of that aspect of it. But you can see a specific colour and how they painted it. So you can choose paint by miniature, and they must have 50 odd on there already, 60 odd. And I can see there's going to be more coming. There's no reason why there aren't. Or you can choose paint by colour. And, red, pink, orange, green, blue, turquoise. And it will give you, go into bone. It's bone, ivory, parchment, rotting bone. And then for each one of them, it will give you their paint system for that. And then what else do we have? Paint bases as well. Similar thing. We have an inventory and a wish list. So literally just every paint listed, and you can tick whether you own it or not, which just saves you having to keep a note for what paints you need to buy, or either a notepad or on your phone. You can literally just go, yeah, I've got that one. Oh no, it's just ran out. I'll put it on my app. I'll put it on my wish list. And they can improve the interaction of that, but at the moment it's just the list basically. But it's useful when you go into a store and you're like, oh yeah, paint app, because it reminds you, because you're in GW, and you've got an official GW app. It's just good. And then the other thing it does is you can actually take a photo. So I don't know if you've played with it.
I've got the app and I've tried it. I haven't taken a photo of it.
So, if you go into paint by colour on the app, there's a camera on the actual top right of the screen, and what it will do is it will bring up the camera on your phone. And as you're looking through stuff, it doesn't actually take a photo, but what you do is you click on your phone on the colour you want to try and recreate. And I'm sitting here and I found a chocolatey type colour. Brilliant. Okay. And then you click on it. Where are we? And then at the bottom it says find matches. And it'll go into find matches and it'll give you the colours closest to that colour you've clicked on. So I've clicked on a goldy kind of caramel type of colour, and the lighting in here is rubbish. So it's given me options of gold, Hammers of Sigmar armour, or Adeptus Custodes gold armour. So you could actually kind of colour match to their things that they put out. So you might not be fully kind of, well, how do I paint that colour? And you can do it that way without, you can avoid a bit of the trial and error.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I'm just trying something a bit silly at the moment. I've got a pot of Mephiston Red, and I'm asking it to find a match to see if it'll.
Okay.
It has found Mephiston Red. Is that?
That is good to know. But it's not something you're going to use a huge amount of the time. But if you are out and about, or if you are home and you're like, actually, I do want to recreate this colour, and I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do it, then it'll help you out. This app isn't going to change painting around the world, but it's just a really useful app.
I think it's definitely useful for sometimes just trying to think about what colours work well. If you are painting red, it's good to see a few different red recipes from different tones. I'll start at this colour and go up to this colour, etc.
Absolutely.
I think that really helps when you're looking at, everyone knows you're going to start on a dark red and go up, but it's just useful to sort of have those colours thrown in front of you and said, well, I'll try this, this and this. Yeah,
definitely. You click on silver, it gives you 5 different types of silver, from rusted metal up to, silver and gunmetal. There's loads of different stuff. And I think there's potential for it to expand as well. Whether they will or not, how much they'll do with it, I don't know. But there is potential with it to expand. I like it. I think it's a pretty cool app. Groovy.
Well, yeah, I like it. I think the hope, you never know, they might do more with it.
Yeah.
It might be. You never quite know.
At the end of the day,
it's cool.
It's a free app.
Yes.
It's a free app which could be useful. So you download it, you keep it. It's not going to take up a huge amount of space on your phone. And then talking about painting, GW, I don't know how new this is or whether it's just been picked up on now, because I haven't really looked into it, because all the reports I saw were linking back to sites of notorious nature, where you wouldn't be able to get on them on your phone anyway due to the amount of pop-up ads. So I blatantly refuse to click on them. But GW have released a kind of code of conduct for attending their events.
And almost like a guide.
Yeah. And part of that is examples of the level of painting that they deem appropriate. Do you want to talk through it briefly?
Yeah, so they basically they mention in this guide that when they mention fully painted, obviously that means different things to different people. So they put together 3 shots of what they deemed as, a very well finished miniature. You know, all the paints on there highlighted. There were transfers. The base was nicely done. There was, you know, everything about it was, you would say, was finished. It looked nice. They then showed what you would probably deem as a 3 colours minimum model. So that was, you know, the basic colours put on in a decent fashion, blocked out, and the base completed. So they said that this what they would deem as a tabletop standard, and still okay for their events, and that you could, you know, that they'd expect that as a sort of a minimum. They would, and they would say that it had options then to be, you know, more to be done, and they'd like to help people to achieve more with their painting. Yeah. And then there was the last example, which was a 1 colour job. So, like just a bright red marine that they said had just been washed, and they called that, I'm trying to remember how they described that, but they basically referred to it as, you know, this is absolutely the bare minimum you can get away with, which was just that basic. Well, I don't want to turn up with a grey model. I'll just paint it all red, and yeah, it was pretty, you know, pretty basic. It does underline probably some of the things that we spoke about in the past about some of the GW events where painting standards have not been great.
Yeah. And the lack of desire to maybe kick people out, which is completely understandable and happens in independent events as well. You know, potentially there are armies I could have kicked out of some of my events, but that's a hard call to make.
Yes,
I feel, and it's tricky. It's a tricky position to be in. Now, the reason this got so much around it was because it was being reported that this was the only way you could play in Warhammer World. You know, that's not how it is. This is for their events in which people are expected to paint models. Now,
yes,
if you want to go into Warhammer World and you want to build your brand new toy right there and put it on the table, unpainted, unbased, you can do that. And you can play a fun, friendly game of Warhammer if your opponent agrees. But for events, it has to be a minimum level of, you know, put into that. And what they've done with that is that bare minimum level. They're letting you know that they're just about letting you in.
Yes, and they're trying to push you in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that is fair. Now people will say, you know, but I don't like painting or what have you. But this is Games Workshop's these are their prime events. These are what attract people to get deeper into the hobby and everything like that, and they want them to look good. And it's not about skill. We've said it again, you know, say it a load of time. It's not about how good you are. It's about just putting that level of effort in to have stuff that looks decent on the table.
Yeah, definitely. There was an interesting part on there about proxies and conversions as well.
Yeah.
Which they mentioned, which was, you know, was nothing groundbreaking, but they pretty much described how proxies weren't allowed at events.
Yeah.
How you were only allowed to, the model had to be equipped with how it looked.
Yeah.
You know, the old WYSIWYG rule. And then exclusions from that, saying things like, you know, grenades aren't part of that, and, you know, certain, artifacts and relics and things aren't part of that. And then how they deemed proxies and conversions to be different. And they did mention that with all conversions, they wanted you to speak to them before you brought them to an event. And it wasn't a remark that they were trying to sort of stipulate. No, we know we are the Gestapo and we will check everything to make sure it's exactly as it is. But they're just saying that they wanted to make sure there was no confusion with people bringing the wrong things that they were using in a different vein, and then people getting upset and confused that they brought the wrong thing, or they'd been told, no, you haven't been told what they were using.
Yeah, and I've seen someone quite prominently on the Age of Sigmar scene been told he wasn't allowed to use certain models, and he couldn't understand why. It's like, they're obviously these, and it's like, well, that's your point of view. If I've never played against your army before, then and you aren't using the appropriate models, then how do I know that, like, without that knowledge, I'm a bit confused as to what are they again? Yeah, you're right. We all said, they've got to be appropriate for the models they're being used. That's kind of a thing that we've gone with as well, and that's understandable. Now, again, I've seen plenty of people go to these events, not tell them that they're using stand-ins or whatever, but all the time they were clear to their opponent, then it didn't really cause a problem. But I completely understand why they put in there. Conversions always as well, you have to use GW models. It's amazing sometimes what people try and get away with, but you wouldn't walk into a nice restaurant with someone else's food and sit down and eat it, would you? So that's the way I look at it. Yeah, it's sensible to me. And yeah,
I suppose for me, where it gets a little bit tricky is there are some cool conversion sets out there.
Yep.
Like the tracks that seem to be becoming very popular. The heresy style tracks you can put on like a standard Land Raider.
Yep.
Or a standard Rhino. And I really love those. I think they look fantastic. And if then I got turned away or told I couldn't use a model because of something like that, I'd be quite annoyed.
Yeah. Again, and I'm not going to say you should just go to these things, but I've seen people go to these things with parts that from other companies. What you're definitely not going to get away with is bringing another company's Rage Great Demon with axe, right? That's definitely not going to happen. Instead of your Khorne Bloodthirster, but having a third party kind of pintle mounted weapon on a tank, they're probably not going to notice. Not that I'm saying that everyone should go out and do it, but it's what's reasonable, It's being sensible about it. And unfortunately, there are people there who take the mick, who really do try and push all the boundaries and then moan when they're found out, as it were. And I've seen people at GW events, they've turned up and someone said to them, look, your army's not up to standard. And actually, Games Workshop have offered to pull an army out for them to use. Because they don't want to turn people away, But, and I think in general, 95% people who go to these events fit well within what that's expected. And out of that 5%, probably 4% of those people don't mean to do it, There's only a very small percentage of people who are looking to get round rules. Some people are disorganised or just slow or whatever in their hobbying and painting. Lots of different reasons that you could put down. Life happens sometimes. You're like, yeah, cool, I've got 2 days to do this. No worries, I can get that done in 2 days. And then you lose a day because you're ill, or the car breaks down. You've got to go and sort it out. These things can happen. So I think it's a reasonable thing. What it does do, if you have got third-party miniatures, you just can't use that army at GW. There are other events.
And if you're buying those sort of vast amount of parts, you are sort of going down that road where you've got to accept that you won't be able to go to those events. Yeah,
and, you can go to independent events. You won't be put on the stream at independent events. That was one thing about London Heresy. I don't think any of the top tables in 40k could be put on the stream because there were so many third-party miniatures. But that's understandable, as I say. You don't go into restaurants with someone else's food. The things you don't do. It's quite fair.
You're saying you don't go into McDonald's and bring your Burger King with you?
Exactly. I mean, you probably get away with it at McDonald's, to be fair, but I certainly wouldn't walk into the pub up the road with a McDonald's, because if they're a food pub, it's just GW are allowed to. At the end of the day, it's their venue. They're allowed to make the rules how they want, and if you go to an event, you're agreeing to abide by those rules.
Yes.
I do remember there was a story in Warhammer years ago when Ben Johnson was working with the events team, and he walked past this guy and he thought, oh no, there's this amazingly immaculately painted dragon. And he knew it was from another company, knew exactly where it was from, and walked up to him at the end of the first game because he only realised halfway through the game. Said, really sorry mate, you're going to have to put that dragon away. That's like a quarter of his army. And the guy just turned around, oh yeah, cool. No, I thought that might happen. I've got my other dragon here and put his GW1 out there. But it didn't look as good, and he tried to get away with it. You know, it's a bit cheeky, but that must be a horrible thing to tell someone. Yeah, you're gonna.
Yeah, but if you're gonna do it, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and it's frustrating if you haven't got a Primarch model and all that jazz as well. But people have converted their own Primarch models out of GW stuff. You know, we've seen Rogel Dawns out of Guillimans and Alfarius out of a number of models. So there are ways around it. Cool. Definitely. I think that's a long intro. So we'll leave that there. We'll come back and we'll talk about looking after your paints. Let's move into our how-to section for this show. Go for it, Neil. Tell us what we're going to talk about.
Okay, so this week I thought we would talk about how to look after your paints. It was something I was giving some thought to the other day, where I think certain paints are well known for going bad quickly and clogging up, and I was trying out a few different bits and pieces, and I thought, you know, how many times do people open up a paint and it's semi-dried or, all gone a bit funny? And there's little bits and pieces you can do, I think, that can help, preserve them and give longer use.
Fair enough. That sounds like a decent enough topic. It's a common problem people have. It's particularly.
Yeah, I mean, do you find it with yours?
Yeah,
I mean, because I'm terrible for leaving the lid open for extended periods while I'm, getting the paint out that I need and going back to it, and that can be a real killer, I think, to a lot of paints.
Yeah, absolutely. Or leaving paint in the cap area, which stops that seal forming, and that's a classic problem with the GW paints. That partly overextending the lid can do that, which means you're spilling around it and just not being careful with it. And some paint's always going to get in there, but but we'll go into that. But yeah, it is a problem. It is a problem. I'm one of those people who ends up buying more paint than I should need because of that issue. Because also I have all the paints.
I got to that stage where I mean, ceramite white is my bane because I've got tons of pots of it in my drawer and scattered around, and I open them up and go, oh yeah, that one's dead because I bought a new one, and I've got about two that are any good. But because once that does, it starts to turn, it turns quickly, and then I'll often just go out and buy another one. And they could, you need. I mean, they can. I find that there's probably that and some of the reds, and I find they thicken up very quickly.
Yeah, they've got a lot of pigment in the reds. That's why they cover quite well. But I suppose. But
it can be an issue. I mean, leaving them open for extended periods of time can really be an issue. I think as well, obviously, the makeup of certain ones is bad, and as you said, the GW pots don't help matters because I think the way you have to operate with them, you're forever, opening them and releasing whatever agents are inside to help keep them thinned, and then keep shutting them down again. And I don't think that helps too much.
No. So, first off, I use pretty much exclusively GW paints when it comes to brush painting, and I've got some Vallejo game colour. Game colour? No, I've got the regular colour. Air paints that I use as well, which every now and then, obviously can be brushed on as well. But generally, when I'm brushing on, I'm using GW. What about you?
I pretty much solely use the GW Citadel paints. I do own a few other odd ones, but I've found that that's what I'm used to. The colours, I know how, I know how they flow, and I just stick with what I know pretty much when I'm painting. Sure. So I've stuck solely to those. And of course, there's lots of other makes out. You've got Scale 75s, you've got Reaper do a set, you've got the P3s, haven't you? There's a lot of paints out there.
So Coat d'Arms still make them. I
think so. Yes, I think they do.
Use
Yeah.
the old GW recipes and pots and everything. And yeah, privateer press. And as you say, there's loads of them. I think one of the major factors for me keeping GW, because people might be saying, "Oh, why?" You hear all the time, "Oh, why do you use this? It's much better paint," or whatever. I know I can drive to my two local, well, I say local towns, they're half hour away, and go into GW and pick up a paint I need. Unfortunately,
Yes.
there are no other gaming clubs independent. There was one in Eastbourne, but it's only open certain days, and and I tend to go that way less often as well. So I know that if I'm in a bind, and I come home through Tunbridge Wells as well, so I can drop off after work, pick up whatever paint that I know I desperately need to get on with painting that night, and get on with it. Otherwise, even with services, companies that send out the paint the next day, you're still waiting a day, and also you're paying an extra £3 postage. So you're not saving any money on their prices either.
That's exactly my issue, that I know that I can go to any GW and there's loads of them about, and I can just pick up that paint that I need. So I know that if I moved over to a different make, I would have those nights where I open up a paint and go, "Oh, I need a new one of this," and then knowing that I've got probably a week before I'll be able to actually realistically go and get that paint, and that for me is frustrating. I don't think I'd want to go down that road.
So yeah, for me, it's not necessarily that I think there are better paints. I think for me as a painter, it's not really a major issue which paint is the best, because I'm not getting the most out of those paints anyway. Every paint line has its advantages and disadvantages. Hearing lots of great stuff about scale 75 for top level painters. Actually, a couple of their colours for me I couldn't really get a handle on. Very different makeup of the paint. But
yeah, and again, I heard, that painting course I went to, Richard Gray was talking about scale 75, and he was saying about certain things he didn't like about some of their paints, and how I think he was referring to how matte the colours came out, and certain ways of painting you didn't want it to be ultra matte.
And this is why it is funny. I've seen the argument so many times on Facebook. Why do you use those paints? These paints are much better. Well, actually, having seen every time it's put up, the amount of people saying, well, depends what you're trying to do. The coat to arms, I think, are a slightly more subtle colour range. GW are quite bright. There's that kind of warm tone to them, haven't they? Which can lend themselves to more fantasy paint styles compared to a lot of other brands that might look. You might not want to paint your Second World War figures with GW exclusively. You might choose, a different paint range.
GW colours are a lot brighter, I'd say, than a lot of other paints.
Yeah, so it's your style, it's what you're trying to achieve, and everything else. So we probably should say that anyway. Yeah.
But yes. So I mean, the key thing for me, some of the things I've been playing around with recently is trying to keep on top of the paint separation.
Sure.
So I've been finding that certain whites and things, when you open them up, you may see there's a bit of a, when you look in the actual paint itself, you maybe see a bit of a film on top or a bit of a colour separation on there. And I think shaking the paint before you start is actually quite important. Yes. And it's something I've been trying to train myself to do of late, and making sure I shake every paint before I open it. Yeah,
absolutely. Even with paints that don't look that way, you should probably do it, because there is that separation, and it might not always be obvious. Obviously, if you've got almost all water at the top and then that's going to be a different story. And again, different colours will have different levels of pigmentation, and they'll be affected by it differently as well. So yeah, the shaking is, it's sensible. You can do it if you're doing it all the time and your paints are good. It's only a brief shake, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And sometimes I may have picked up an old paint and given it a really good shake if I haven't used it for a long time.
Yeah.
If it's something I maybe only go to maybe once every 6 months or something.
Sure. And
I think that's something I've been trying to train myself to do, because I've been, I think, very lax. I used to just open paint, take some paint out of it, put it on the palette, shut it up again. So I think you can become lazy with it, if you know what I mean. It's very easy to sort of not do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there are, if I've seen a paint that's a little bit separated or a little bit. Sometimes when they dry up, it's only part of the paint, so you can shake it and kind of rejuvenate the other part, as it were, and get definitely. A little bit more life out of it. So that is a good one, a real good hard shake. Then I've also bought the plastic balls to put in there.
Yes, that does definitely help.
Yeah, they're cheap. That's why I did them. They don't have a huge amount of weight to them. You can buy the aluminium. Is it aluminium? No.
Stainless steel.
Stainless steel ones. Yeah, it's the stainless steel ones, isn't it? That won't affect the paint. Obviously, it's a little bit more expensive in that. If you're doing it for, if you're doing it for a few paints, it's not going to make a difference. But if you've got maybe a paint that is notorious, it might be worth just popping one in there to start with on a new pot. And therefore, every time you shake it, it's agitating more of that, so you're not losing. Because every time you shake it, you're not going to get all of that paint moving around the same way, are you?
No, you're not. You're not. And if it is quite separated, a quick shake's not going to do the trick. It might still be quite solidified at one end. So an agitator would help, definitely.
Yeah, and then going to the extremes, I've also seen the paint shakers be purchased by people.
Oh, really? What do you mean, like ones at like B&Q and sort of,
smaller versions of, or even the homemade paint shaker, where it's attached to a drill bit. Yeah, there you go.
I was thinking about that the other day, because I was trying to resurrect an old paint, and I thought, is there some way I can attach this to a drill and get it to shake it up for me?
I mean, if you're desperate, the issue is you have to make sure that lid is staying on. Do it outside, even if you're sure it's going to stay on. Yeah,
don't do it next to your Horace Heresy book collection.
No, exactly, or just anywhere where you can get it all over the carpet and ruin the carpet. And there are some ghetto versions of that you can find in places, and they can do a job. If you're getting to that point, depends how much you've got left, I suppose. If you've got a shed load left in there, you want to save it. But if it's only a small bit, I'd be tempted just to chuck it out.
I think the price point of a lot of the paints makes it sometimes like that. I think that's where I've been so lazy with it sometimes, because you just think, I'm just going to buy another one. Yeah. If you buy one paint a week, it doesn't exactly break the bank. For me, it got to a stage where I lined up how many ceramite whites I had in front of me and thought, well, this is ridiculous. Now I'm forever buying this one paint. And if you looked in most of them, there was still probably 3/4 of it left. And it had dried up, so I was thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way of trying to look after this and stay on top of it.
Yeah, and GW paints are one of the more expensive paint ranges out there for the amount you get.
Definitely.
And they're always going to be, they're the brand name. They're the Apple.
And they're the convenience as well, aren't they? You're buying that brand and you're buying the convenience of it being there.
Over the course of, if that paint pot lasts, I don't mind spending that extra bit, but if you're only ever using a third of it and chucking it out, that's sensible, isn't it? Sensible.
There's something to be said for their air range as well, because their air range is obviously, because it's got so much more thinner in, I think it would last a lot longer. I bought a few of the air metallics because I was so fed up of those constantly going, like having a funny consistency.
Right, yeah.
So that's a similar sort of thing.
Fair enough. So, how do you prevent that happening in the first place? We talked about the build-up of the paint around the lids. Now I've got...
that's a big thing, I'd say.
I've got a Mephiston red here that's over 3/4 full and is pretty much ruined. And actually, this one's probably me just not closing the lid properly. So you're going to get paint in the actual lid of the GW paints, and it's going to coat. And I've seen every now and then you see someone post on Twitter where they've gone through a load of their collection with a hobby knife and something else and actually scraped it out. And it takes some time and it's a bit awkward because those lids don't really stay, they're not designed for that purpose. But, it does make a difference. You do end up getting that seal back. But it's very easy with the GW paints to push the front forwards and forget to push the back down. And that's where you get that drying up. So making sure you're closing the lid properly. I'm bad at it because you automatically go to the front and close it. So if you have got any paint in there, that's going to dry up. It's going to cause it to not shut properly, and that's going to build up, and then you've got this reoccurring problem. It's self-defeating, really.
I do think the paints you go in more, you get that build up a lot quicker as well. So you could pretty much look at your paint collection and know the colours you go in a lot, because you've got those big build ups paint and around that back edge.
If it is a big build up, get in there and have a bit of a scrape of it out. And sometimes it's not easy, sometimes it's fine.
Do you know what I do?
Be careful about flicking it.
I take the lid off. Off the paint.
Cut it off.
I might run it. No, it actually pings off if you.
Oh, the whole base. Yeah, good
section.
idea.
So I take the whole thing off. I'll clean it under a tap to just get there, but then I'll invert it, push it inside out with my thumb, and then obviously the paint ridge is just sitting there, and just pull it off and then ping it back around. You do need to give it a fair bit of force to invert it. But when you do, obviously, it's a hell of a lot easier to take that paint out.
So how easily do they come off the actual pot?
Very easily, actually. I saw someone where they were doing a demonstration of transferring, and they were cutting them all with a pair of clippers.
Right.
And I was like, why are you cutting them? They just lift off.
Do they? Because this one in front of me is not lifting off. I'm literally doing it while we chat, and that's...
Right, I've opened up a pot. Live demo.
So do you open the lid up?
Open the lid up and then put your thumb underneath the bottom ridge and just push up.
Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, if you pull on that joint, push on that joint. Sorry. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that's a game changer.
Yeah, and it is a lot easier than I just would run that under the tap, and then I invert it with my thumb, like push right in. It is tough. Yeah, I've hurt my thumbs before, like trying to really. Yeah, but I've got painter's hands. Remember, they're soft and gentle.
What it also means, though, is the biggest problem with scraping it out is you're holding a pot of paint, and of course you're applying pressure. So at some point that pressure gives, whether it's you getting the paint out where it can flick across the room or in your eye or what have you, or that paint pot judders, and then all of a sudden you're pouring paint everywhere. Yes. So it's better if you have got one that you want to save. Yeah, take that lid off. That's quite a good idea. I mean, you can. One way of stopping that happening in the first place potentially is. So I use. I've just bought some Rosemary and Co brushes. On Miles uses them, and I've got my Citadel brush. Citadel brushes come with them as well. Most brushes come with the protectors.
Yes.
So when I'm painting, I've always got a protector. Sorry? Hats. Yeah. Protector, hat, whatever. Bit of plastic tubing. So that, I've always got one of them sitting around the paint desk. Mm-hmm. You can actually slide it with the GW paints in behind the joint.
Yep.
To hold the lid vertical, which A, means it doesn't fall down on itself. So you've always got access to it, which, because again, they can fall down, which is annoying when you're trying to get paint out. But it also holds it at a point where if any paint's going to drip down, it's going to drip back into the pot.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, actually, because I think where you I do it a lot, you force it open as far as it go back, because you want to be getting some paint out of there over maybe a couple of dips. And that full back position does mean a lot of the paint will run in that back section where then it all collects and then you get that big dried ring. So it's it's probably not a bad tip actually. If you use something like that where you just want to keep it just gently open rather than all the way back, you'll get a lot less of that paint drying on the back edge.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I'm sure you could find other things to use as well if you don't want to use your hats to do it. I'm sure you could get
drill bits. I used them once. I had a load of like small drill bits I had sticking around the place, and I was bunging those in the back to make it, make it easier to hold them open.
An old bit of sprue off the actual.
There we go. We love a use for an old bit of sprue.
Or even I've just tried if you put a cotton bud in the right place, the sticks.
Yes,
that'll do it as well. You got to be a little bit because they're quite thin. But yeah, they're and again there are positives and negatives to every type of pot as well. but good managing of whichever pot you've got. The Coat to Arms certainly used to, Foundry. They use the old GW pots with the pop lid with the little tab that you pop the lid open. Now, the problems with them were their lids would sometimes be really firmly stuck on, to the point where when it finally went again, you were half throwing the paint pot across the room. Or even worse than that, the tab would break, and then you've got no way of getting your thumb underneath that actual...
Yeah, the tab breaking was always an issue. I remember once having a, like a bottle opener, like an old-fashioned bottle opener, and having one of those to open the lids of paint because the tab's broken off. Yeah. It was ridiculous.
It's crazy, isn't it? And, dropper bottles tend to be seen as the best.
Yeah, and you know what? I would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
From what I've seen of when I've used dropper bottles, they are so much easier.
Yeah. For mixing, they're good in terms of, 1 drop to 2 drops to 3 drops.
Yeah, you can really work out a recipe with those, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. Obviously, you can't agitate it, but in theory, you shouldn't be needing to as much. So a shake,
less chance of air getting into them, isn't there?
Yeah. So there is that, and that's why, and also for airbrush use as well. It's a lot easier to transfer from a drop bottle into an airbrush than it is, scooping up paint on a brush or whatever and putting that in the top. It's almost pointless. So they definitely have the advantages in that respect, and Vallejo and stuff like anything that's made specifically for airbrushing, usually apart from GW, will have will probably come in a dropper pot. And did you transfer over a load of paints? I know plenty of people who have done it. I bought a lot of the
equipment to do it. I bought a big bag of the dropper bottles, and I bought a pot of airbrush thinner to do it. And I have yet to do my first one. And I said to myself that when I bought a new paint, I was then going to start putting them straight into the dropper bottle. And I haven't actually yet bought a new one.
All right.
So, but I will. I mean, it's one of those things. If I thought, I'm not going to sit here for several days transferring every one of my paints into a dropper. I was going to try and use the ones that I was then replacing, and thinking, well, if I use that regularly, it might be better that it's in a dropper bottle. So
yeah, sure.
So I'll try and transfer. So when I buy my next Ceramite White, which maybe not be that long until I do, I might then put that into a dropper bottle, and I'll be using it out of there.
Yeah, I would say there's a few videos on YouTube and whatever with techniques on doing that, because you want to get as much paint out as possible, because you don't want to lose any paint, because otherwise you're losing, you're paying even more for what you're doing, and you don't want to make a mess. So
yeah, definitely.
But putting the thinner in certainly does help with that. I don't think there's a huge amount more you can do keeping your paints. Potentially, if you aren't using paints, shaking them up. Like, if they're, but then
I think you've got to be careful where you store your paints as well. I think, they react to heat. So, if you've got them in a box or something, don't put that by a radiator or on on your windowsill. Keep that in a nice cool location, keep it out of direct sunlight, those sort of just general tips like that. Because I've had paints before where I've left them in silly places, like I think I left a load in the loft once, and how hot a loft can get in the middle of summer. Going back up to those and realising, they're all completely dried up. Well, that was a waste.
Croydon Del Sol. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. In theory, I think you're better off having them upright.
Yes.
But I must admit, my storage for my paints is a GW case with KR foam in it. 4 layers of KR foam is 160 paints that I can store. And then that can be closed up and put away, out of the way. And it means that I can open it up, take a layer off to get to, whichever paint I need, and go from there. So it's very handy in that respect. It can sit beside my table and I can go, right, what do I need? Okay, that's on the 3rd row down. Boom, I've got that. But there are lots and lots of MDF racking or nail varnish, like pot rack seems to be very popular.
I was looking at one of those today, actually, a nail polish acrylic stand, because I was thinking I've I was trying to think of if I had banked my paints, I might actually have them a bit better organised and be quicker at selecting my paints.
Yeah, I think
rather than where did I put that one? You know, and sort of.
If you've got a set-up area, so I try now, because I used to have just all my paints everywhere, and you spend 10 minutes looking for one, and you'd also have a tray full of paints, so it would take up room on your desk. If you've got a dedicated painting area, they can be fixed to the wall, they can be on a shelf, they can be anywhere within reach, and that's really handy. And even if you don't have all your paints up there, you can have, you're going to have your favourite paints that tend to get used more than others, whether that's just because those colours are more often. If you're playing Age of Sigmar, you might have browns for leathers and things like that. If you're painting Iron Warriors, you're probably going to want your silvers, yellows, blacks out.
Yep.
So you can have them almost in pride of place, so they're always available for you. And again, making sure they're in the right position.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
You don't want, if you're, I use an LED light now, doesn't produce any heat. My old lamp used to pile heat onto a large section of my work desk, which dries the paint out. So, and that's again whether you're when using them and when storing them.
Exactly. I mean, there's something to be said for. I've seen some people invert their paints and have them upside down in a paint rack.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not too sure if that's a colour thing where they like to select a colour by looking at the. A solid lump at the bottom of the pot and going, right, that's the shade of blue I want. Or if it's a convenience thing for not having to shake your paint up too much, maybe.
The problem is the paint's still going to settle and it's still going to separate if it's left there for ages. But yeah, I remember old GW stores where they had paints stored in the paint trays where every single pot had the colour painted on the top.
Yes.
It's a similar process to that. I think you can see what colour you need, or you can look at a range of colours and decide how you want to go with it. So there's plenty of options in there. Where else? What else have we got?
Well, one of the other things I have done recently, which was a bit of a revelation for me, but it's nothing too amazing. But like I said, I bought this pot of airbrush thinner.
Sure.
And I now keep that on my desk. And when I do open up a paint and I think, that's on the turn, I'll give it just a quick squirt of airbrush thinner and then shake it up. And I think that constant replenishing of that thinning agent really does increase the lifespan of those paints. Because I think when you see a paint turning, it's best to try and act on it straight away and put something in there to keep it going.
Yeah, that's something I don't do. But yeah.
I keep that on my desk now. I just keep my little pot of airbrush thinner, and if I open up a paint and think, that is starting to turn, a quick squirt, give it a shake, and then carry on. And I think that will increase the length of a lot of my paints. Yeah,
that's fair enough. That's possibly not a bad idea, actually. That's quite good. I'm not 100% sure we got much else. Any other ideas?
If anyone else has got any more ideas, please let us know.
Why not? It's about taking the ones that work for you, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm sure people have got different ways of, how they look after their paints and ways of doing it. But, if you've got anything, let us know and we'll shout it out.
I mean, there are little things like I use a wet palette because I'm incredibly slow at actually just getting paint on the model, as I've said many times. And a wet palette just allows me a bit more time. And means
to work.
So it means I can get paint out and then I can actually shut the lid on the paint pot while I work with the paint I've got, which is, obviously it's going to help with the drying out, stopping it drying out. Not everyone uses a wet palette, different sides of the opinion on that one, that's fair enough. But I do find that helps, and it just helps me go through less paint as well. Which is what you're trying to do here. You're trying to not buy your paints as often as possible.
The number one factor I think is you spend £2.30 or £2.50 or whatever it is now on a pot of paint. You want to get the most use out of it you can. You want to virtually be getting down to the bottom of that paint pot and thinking, well, I've absolutely scraping the bottom of this now. There's nothing left in it. Versus, that one's knackered and it's half full and it's all dried up and you just throw it in the bin. I think I think everyone's done that with paints. And if we all did maybe spend a couple of seconds more on a bit of paint care, you could save yourself a few quid over the year.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's very easy to look at it as a few quid in a hobby that's not cheap. What's a couple of quid? £2.50, £2.75, whatever it is. Well, it's not a huge amount of money, but if you sat down and looked at how often you were doing it, as you say, there are the people who look at it and go, "That's £2.75, and I can get double that if I go somewhere else." Yeah, fair enough. But every penny you save doing that is a penny you can spend somewhere else, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And I think that, like I said, the thing for me was when I looked at how many Ceramite whites I had on my desk.
Yeah.
I was like, hold on a second, I've got 5 here.
Do you know what you need to do?
4 of them are no good.
Do you know what you need to do? When you find a paint that's no good, you need to chuck it out.
Yeah, but see, I'm very lazy even to that degree. I'll just stick it at the back of the table.
Yeah.
Oh, that one's a bit ropey.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that's where I've noticed where I've been buying the same colours over and over again. Because it is, again, so easy and convenient to do that then I'm not looking after them. So that's my new thing now, looking after my paint.
You say that. I've got 2 Mephiston Reds that have gone off here. I don't know how long they've been sat there. That's because I use Corn Red more than Mephiston Red. It's just that's the way it is. But one thing I do find is very useful is that, we probably talked about it in the news, but the new Citadel app. So when a paint does go out, I put it on my wish list on that. And yeah, I can make a note of it or whatever, and I have done that before. I've put notes on my iPhone, but actually having an app just seems, I can update my Citadel paint app. Just seems to.
Something to be said for when you do go to the hobby shop or wherever you buy your paints from, is then remembering what ones you need. Because the amount of times I've done that and gone, what paints is on it? And buying a couple and then getting home and going, I needed Pally Witch Fresh. Why didn't I buy one of that? And then realising.
Yeah. So yeah,
so it does make life easier.
And having that it's just that little, because I'm actually using the app a fair amount anyway. It's not an app that's going to change the world, but it just helps out. It's good. Yeah, I think we're done on this one. If you've got any ideas, any tips and tricks you think you can help other people, help us. Always help us.
Yeah. We always help us.
All the help we can get. But yeah, awesome stuff. All right, we'll have some music and go on to the next segment. We're going to talk a little bit about Talons and how do you solve a problem like the Talons of the Emperor, or if there is indeed a problem to be solved. It's been talked about a fair amount recently online. As soon as the Talons list came out, there was a lot of chat, and a few events recently have maybe highlighted them. We had a very powerful list at the London Heresy.
Yes, with my friend Matt Fuchs.
Yeah.
Mike Fuchs, sorry.
And there's a few going to Ruination, I think. And the thing that really sparked it for me was that I've had one list in for Blood and Glory at the time of recording this, and it was a Talons list which may be finding itself up against some extra stuff thrown into the opposition army, whether it's special rules or what have you. Because I can see it being an issue for, a few of the armies that are being bought to events, to narrative events particularly. And I think we need to identify first off why we might have an issue with the Talons. I'm not saying they shouldn't be playing them or whatever. I think there are some hardline people who do go that way. Who say you shouldn't be playing them outside of Prospero games and things like that. But if you're doing that, again, you get down to the point of you're never allowed to use Ferrous,
Yeah, and I think that's not the idea behind these lists, is it really?
No, absolutely. It's designed to allow you to engage in another narrative. And it's not just, Ferrous is the easy one, but, the fists don't do a lot until Terror. They do bits, but they don't do a lot. And again, You're going to tell a fifth player he can't use Dawn unless you're playing a Siege of Terror game. You know, and at that point, should you be allowing Fulgrim in his normal state? Or Angron,
and should you say, well, those two armies can't fight each other because they never did in the books? All these stupid things.
You know, there's lots of possible issues doing that. The Ultramarines is one. The Ultramarines don't fight many people in the Heresy, so there we go. So the idea is to get past that, and I think we need to, ask the question: do we have an issue, or why do we potentially have an issue? And there are reasons people collect the Talons list. And I think the majority of the time we're talking Custodes.
Yes, yeah, I would say out of the majority of armies I've seen, it's been mainly Custodes that I've seen.
I do actually think in some ways that Custodes list can be better with Sisters in it because they're cheap unit holders, and we'll talk about that in cheap objective holders, Fearless as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but I think maybe it's just because of the models as well, but when people talk about having issues with Talons of the Emperor, it's normally written, I've got an issue with Custodes, so we'll go for that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, I mean, there are quite a few Custodes armies appearing, and I think we have to look at why is that. First off, there was a box with a few in, and and they're cool models. They're really cool models.
If we get down to it, if you think about it, you know, that box came out, and you know, everyone. I remember. Would you remember when they leaked the photos of the White Dwarf, the front cover? There was just hysteria at, like, you know, the fact that we were getting plastic Custodes models, and I think that was a mass. You know, everyone has always wanted it, and they're suddenly in plastic as well. It's not like a Forge World resin kit that maybe would have made a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to have to spend a bit of money getting those. It was almost like nearly everyone got them off the back of, well, I want to get the box set anyway.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. So you do have those people. You know, Custodes are one of those things that have been talked about for many a year. So I remember being 20-odd, 21, 22, having chats about how cool Custodians were, you know, not knowing anything about them back then because we didn't have that information. It's like, you know, they're like super Space Marines. How cool are they? You know, we like Space Marines, so we're going to like super Space Marines, aren't we?
Of course.
If you follow that logic, we like Space Marines because they're superhuman, so we're going to like whatever's super to them. So there is that. There is the story aspect. There is the cool model aspect, and there is, you know, a certain amount of they're a different army in plastic. Whereas if you want to get militia, that's a lot of money.
Yes, unless you can do some cool plastic conversions of those.
Yeah, but even then, like quantity of models.
Yes, you're going to spend money no matter how you do it with the militia, aren't you?
Yeah, you can. There are lots of ways to build Custodes lists. The points cost of the models mean you aren't having as many. They are expensive, so it doesn't always work out to be a cheap army, but certainly cheaper than some of the other armies out there, depending on how you want to build it.
I think the fact that a lot of people have got some of the core models already
helps. Yeah.
Helps, doesn't it? Yeah, you could think,
do you know what,
I could do it. You could paint them up and think, oh yeah, do you know what, I could expand this, add a few bits into it.
Yeah, the 40k box coming out as well helped, because you could trade off the other bits if you wanted to do it that way, because they were all easy usable. So they've got that aspect to them, easy to kind of get a hold of. They're fairly easy to paint if you want to go that way. They're gold.
There's some very easy techniques to get them looking decent, isn't there, really?
Spray can gold, wash. That's 90% of your model done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is, not all of us are capable or have the time or the desire to spend hundreds of hours on armies. You know, I'm sat here tonight painting my Blood Bowl, and I was like huffing a little bit. She's like, "You're all right," and I'm like, "I'm just fed up of painting this colour on these goblins." You know, it just happens every now and then for me. I don't like it. There are times where I'm just like, you know what? Sometimes I wish I could just get spray can out, dip them in a pot of shade, and away you go. And if you can do that with a bit of skill, actually, these models come up looking really good.
Yes, yeah. They've got nice detail to capture that sort of technique, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely.
It's not like all big flat plates that when you wash them, it's all going to look a bit pulled and a bit rubbish. You dip them, and it's going to really bring out the colours.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's just a case of going in and hitting the highlights, hitting the details, and away you go. You've got a squad done in no time at all. And as we said, they are very different. They have some amazingly cool stuff, and we hadn't seen a huge amount of new cool stuff in the Heresy that wasn't like when the Leviathan came out. Everyone went mad for it because it was like, okay, yeah, it is a dreadnought, but it's not, is it? It's like a, I don't know. It's like when they're bringing the Typhon out and comparing it to a Land Raider. Yeah, it's so cool. But but everyone has access to that. But these are these are different. These are cool. These have, weird technologies we don't know about. These have the awesome looking grav tanks, which have such a different aesthetic from any of the marine stuff. And all that, and even with the gunship now as well. So you've got all that going into why people collect Talons list. And then actually, the final reason is there are people who are in this game who aren't as into the narrative and who enjoy the kind of the challenge of gaming. And the rules are very good. And let's face it, we talk many times, people's armies can tend to push one way as well. And the Talons have some pretty good rules.
Yeah, I think I've always said they've got, like, Forge World have always been a little bit guilty of making their own rules very, very powerful. And I think they got a bit of free rein, didn't they, with the Custodes to really sort of push some boundaries.
Forge World made all the rules for all of Heresy. I think sometimes they've struggled with the elite armies to get the balance right, the super elite ones, because it's very easy to have a super elite force that just dies to weight of numbers.
Yes.
Which is something you want, but you don't want it happening too often. And I think maybe they did just push the other way. And the army has weaknesses, and it can be played against. But again, one of the biggest factors in its strength actually is not necessarily that they're strong, but that you need to bring different tools to deal with them than you would for Marines. So, yes. I mean, I say all the time, everything kills Marines in this game. Yeah. Even bolters do it to a point. But anything above a bolter usually kills a Marine. All of a sudden...
You're right.
Yeah, and they're not expensive options a lot of the time. All of a sudden, you're not killing, Custodes with missile launchers anymore. Yeah, that kind of thing. A lot of stuff is not doing a great deal to them. And when you take into account the number of wounds, the way they spread out, which keeps them very, they can be 3 inches apart all of a sudden. Yeah, even your bigger super heavies, template weapons are only hitting 3 or 4 of them.
Again, that's a massive factor, isn't it? Because when you maybe take an army that you think, right, I've got loads of big plates to drop on people, and then suddenly there's this elite force that's just a little bit spread out. They just don't warrant the points. I remember I had a friend that always used to shoot a not a demolisher cannon, the really big one on the Typhon. I can't remember the name of the cannon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he'd just shoot it at my Contemptor Dreadnought.
Yeah.
And it was just like, right, make 1 5-up invuln save. Yep, saved it.
Exactly.
That was a waste of a shot.
Yeah, and it is a problem if you're down to doing that. People are scared witless of my Thanatar until they spread out and I only hit 4 models. And yeah, I've killed 4 models, but that's a 300-odd point model that's killed 4 models in a turn. It's not an effective use of its points. So it certainly helps them be viable. And things like the shield and the -1 to hit for the front arc, all that jazz. They've got stuff which you want to bring different weapons to deal with them. If you haven't got AP2, then you need a high strength at least, and actually quite a lot of shots, because if you're trying to get through 2-up armor, it's not easy. So yeah, and even if you do get through, if you've got higher AP shots, they've all got invulnerable saves. It's all jazz. So yeah, they are very much an army that is causing some consternation, and that's not to say I don't think you can play them. So I've played Custodes was one of my most fun games I played at Durham last year, and I know other people who've had cracking games against Custodians. I've also had Custodes players tell me they don't know how to make their army fit a level of narrative because they maybe aren't quite attuned to doing that themselves, to self-regulating, but also because they want the cool stuff, and it seems to them that whoever they're playing, it seems to all work because a lot of it does work.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem is that we often go for the cool toys, and we're all guilty of looking at the rules and thinking, well, I want to take this version because this version's better.
Yeah, there's a reason.
And with the Custodes, that means you are going to end up with a very, very powerful army.
Yeah, you can do, absolutely. And yeah, and that's the way it is. Should we look at some of the things then? So, yeah. Characters. We'll start with the characters. So they've got two characters who are becoming, pretty hated. One because it's unkillable, so that's the guy with the three up invulnerable, and they're immune to instant death, and he's got -1 to hit because of his shield. So that guy can just stand at the front and absorb everything thrown at him.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many points he is. I should have brought up the email with it on there. But when he is like that, I should say, I don't know how I said it earlier because I sometimes say stuff. But the basic Custodes aren't immune to instant death; they're just toughness 5. But making those guys immune to instant death is that much better.
It certainly helps, doesn't it? Because there's a lot of when you look at multi-wound models, your biggest win is to try and instant death and wipe them off.
Yeah.
That one big hit, and they then suddenly have got they're immune to instant death. Suddenly it's like, oh right, I've got to chew through all these wounds now.
And it's bad enough when your power fists are no longer instant killing something.
Yeah.
But then it's even worse when your Knight Porphyrion is hitting something and not instant killing it because he can kill the normal troops, But yeah, it's the nature of the beast, isn't it? So yeah, you got this unkillable shield captain, and I've seen lists with 2 of them, and essentially it's a negative play experience. So that basically means it's no fun because there's no skill to putting that character at the front of a unit and absorbing shots. That's not well played. That's okay. You've taken the obvious thing in the list, and that's not to say that you shouldn't necessarily have one. I think what Joe was going to do at the club he was talking about was you either take the 4 up invulnerable and the shield, but you don't make it the 3 up. Which is actually, it's a big enough of a difference that it does make a difference, There's all that gear for them. You don't have to take it all.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say, isn't it? Yeah, you can always slightly tweak it.
Yeah. And it's just knowing when to stop. And we'll go into that a little bit. And then the other character is Valdor. And Valdor's a beat stick. Valdor, you can't even throw Terminators in to slow him down. Not Terminators, Dreadnoughts, because he'll just ruin Dreadnoughts.
I think that, for me, one of the big things for him is the any wound 4+ is instant death, or in the case of vehicle, penetrating hit, which huge. I just think is obscene. When you've got some big nasty tank like 14 armor all round, and you're thinking, well, at least that's safe, and then suddenly, bang! Oh no.
And in the background, he should be able to hold. He should be able to. Well, not go toe-to-toe with a Primarch, but he should be able to stand up to a Primarch and at least make the Primarch work a little bit. And in game, he kind of does that. I've seen games where, if you get lucky with your saves, he just sits there and tanks it. But he should be above everything else. And so, again, where's that balance? But it just means you haven't got a lot that can really deal with him. It's really hard.
he's at. I even think that if you compare him for some Primarchs, you know, for instance, I've run Ferris for many games. If I was running up to say a super heavy, a Titan, a Knight, or even like a bit large tank, I think, right, how long is it going to take me to knock off all these hull points? But even if you're running him, you run up and think, well, yeah, no problem. I'll get through this tank in no time.
Yeah, plenty of attacks. Good weapon skill. Away you go. Bish, bash, bosh.
4 ups. Oh, they're penetrated. Right, roll them. Oh, right, that's happened. And it's a case of, well, suddenly that tank's just evaporated. Whereas if I ran Ferris into a tank or a Knight, I'd be thinking, hold on, is this going to go how I want it to go?
Yeah. With Knights, it's, are you going to do it in one turn? Do you risk the stomp?
Yes.
And Valdon might be thinking, yeah, I can do that. And, obviously that's not, dice come into it and everything else, but he is an extremely good character, and he should be. But
yes,
he's, again, I just think he's that 10% too much. But it's not a problem if you take him in the right list. And again, we'll go through some things. The basic troops. The basic troops they have are really good. They're really good. You take the shield guys particularly, they don't die. They just run up the table, and they can probably out-combat anything you throw at them. So the weekend they came out, Ben Greaves took his to Throne of Skulls, I think it was. And there was talk about Red Butchers throwing themselves into them, and just that little bit of luck, because it's quite interesting how you only need a small change in the percentage of your dice rolls to really have a big effect. If you roll some good saves, when he did, just a bit luckier than normal, and lost like 1 to charging Red Butchers, and then slaughtered them. And it only takes that small variance for that to happen.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Because their rules are so good, you only got to get that one lucky roll, and suddenly they've absolutely destroyed something.
And again, those small variances in luck, that is another, because you don't do anything to achieve that. And again, that's potentially a negative play experience, because, well, I did everything I could. I charged my best unit into a basic squad he's got. He just rolled slightly above average. And that meant I didn't do anything to him. Is not what should be happening. You don't mind if you go, I ripped him a new one. I mean, I died, but I ripped him a new one. Then you wouldn't be, you'd at least feel involved in that combat.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that's, it's the nature of what it is. And both options are good. I think the shield ones particularly are that negative play experience. The jet bikes. Now,
jet bikes.
So jet bikes in 30k are pretty great anyway. So
yes, yeah.
You're flying around.
You see someone running Dark Angels and they've got all jet bikes. You think, here we go.
Yeah, just any jet bikes to be fair. But Dark Angels ones particularly, 2 up, possibly jinking, moving 12 inches, heavy bolters on them. They are limited in their options of what they can have on the Marines themselves, but we've got the heavy support ones now as well. Jet bikes are fantastic, to the point where you very rarely see normal bikes. Now, put a Custodian on that jet bike, give him a D3 shot las cannon, which is, it's slightly smaller range, but it's that's something to be struggling to deal with, and allow them to again be 3 inches apart.
Yeah, toughness 6.
Toughness 6. All those things you're thinking, these weapons will deal with normal jet bikes, are struggling that bit more against those jet bikes. And that's fine, but when it's happening across the whole army and you haven't set up for it, it can be a real problem. And the speed, because we'll go through the jet bikes along with the transports. We'll talk about the transports. They provide the speed where the army could be, it's not slow. It's not slow, but if you can limit how they can get to you, you can limit how much they can kill. So the jet bikes allow, again, a bit of an outreach. The transports and the skimmers in general, the tanks in general, are fantastic. Now, the transports, I'd be tempted to run them by themselves whether I was putting anything in there or not. Because they're really quite cheap and they do a great job. And with all the custodian vehicles, they've got, they can fire their guns independently, power the machine spirit, and they've got one gun. So you can jink every turn with your flare, with your flare shielded armor value 13, skimmer, which you then jink and then fire normally.
Yeah, because ultimately you're going to be where you've got the machine spirit, you can just literally make it so hard to take that vehicle out.
Yeah, and
you position it right with the front armour with the flare shield, and stuff will just go. Well, there's no point in me shooting at you.
Yeah, it becomes really hard to do it. And when I played my Mechanicum against them, I had the Big Knight, the Porphyrian, and I also had some other half-decent troops. And it was like, right, well, that Porphyrian's got to go on a march because he has to be shooting stuff in the flank to make his shots count. And I was struggling to get through them, to take them down. And that they're cool. And that's the little skimmers. They've got, one of them's got a gun, has got instant kill weapons on it. So actually, something like Mechanicum, which potentially has the tools more naturally to deal with them. My army has a lot of AP2. They come along and just kill all your Castellax if you're not careful, or all your Voraks or your Thanatar. It can really hurt that. They've got a really nice. The army actually internally within itself has got a decent balance, and there's an answer to everything in that army, and you can argue about whether you take, like, whenever you take the Terminators or the basic troops or other things. Most of the time you can argue for any of the weapon options. So that's, within itself, it's not a bad list. But when it comes out, it just appears to be that level above. And the speed of it, because if it couldn't move very quickly, as I say, it would be much more limited. But again, that wouldn't be much fun for you as a custodian player, I don't think, trudging up the board. But the Crusader rule, running on 3d6, the speed of the vehicles, being able to jink the whole time they're moving up as well, and if you're taking Valdor particularly, but deep striking as well. There's the army can be on you very quickly, and with even the Dreadnoughts can as well. First time I'm playing the Dreadnoughts, just flying up the table, and you need to be shooting everything at once.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those ones where in most games, I think you look at what your biggest threat is, and you maybe target that threat and you try and take it out. But when everything can come at you so quickly, those threats can go from, well, that's all right, that's over there, I'll worry about this unit. Then suddenly that other unit is on top of you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, hold on, I can't do anything about that now. And then suddenly it's just smash-faced and gone through the whole army.
And the amplifier for that is the resilience of the army itself. So as we're saying, if you're in the front arc of the Contemptors and he's got a shield, it's harder to hit. You need to be doing every single wound, unless you have got some strength 10 weapons. You need to be doing every single wound, but then they've got invulnerable saves, again, some good rolling. Conversely, some bad rolling can hurt them, but it has to be bad rolling. It's not like a little bit bad. It's decently bad. Actually, for me, again, using my Voraks with poison rounds on rotor cannons was actually one of my good weapons, just to go, right, here's 3 Voraks, here's 24 shots, hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s.
Yes, because it's like that wounding on 4 thing, isn't it? Because that's, again, you're then taking away one of their bonuses of the high toughness.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, you got 2 up armor save, but there's, 18 dice, roll them. There's, or, if you get a good roll, a little bit of luck again, or even 12 dice.
Because that's what I suppose in some ways it's looking at trying to take. I mean, ultimately, when you look at an elite army, you often think, well, I need weight of shots, and I need things like that to try and counter it. But I suppose the problem is they've still got resilience above and beyond that, haven't they?
The toughness, along with the armor, along with those special rules, and in fact also, the banner bearers, the not running away as much. That all, actually made one of that guy's units break. And it was like, phew, they're going to take a couple of turns to come back. That's my respite in that part of the board, which plays a big part, actually, because there was nothing in my army that could really stand toe-to-toe with the basic stuff. I was relying on my character. I didn't want to get him anywhere near any characters. So, yeah, all those things add together. There's a lot of very good stuff in there. And as I say, I think actually if you take a couple of cheap Sisters of Battle units to hang back in your own deployment zone to hold on to objectives, spread them out, they're not easy to get rid of. So there is lots of stuff you can do if you want to go that way with them. But having said all of that, I do think there are ways you can assist yourself, and maybe event organisers and all that as well can play a part. I think, first off, and we started talking about this at the start, is if you're going to be playing the Talons of the Emperor, Talon of Horus is a book. If you're going to be playing a Talons list and you want custodians because they're cool, that's fine. Self-regulate. So we said right at the start, some people can't do it, some people don't really know what it means. Well, what it means is, when you identify those best things in the list, you don't automatically take them, or you don't take more than one of them.
Or you tone them down by saying, I won't give it every single one of those toys that makes them amazing.
Yeah.
I'll only give it these things. So
the Shield Captain with a 4-up invulnerable is still very, very good. But actually, people feel they've got more of a chance against it, because they have. Valdor's fine, Valdor in a unit of Custodians or Terminators, deep striking with all this support unit around him, and then taking a Knight Errant to assist in the list, who's an apothecary, right? Yeah,
yes, yeah,
yeah. That's a slightly harder thing to do, especially if all the rest of the army's deep striking in as well. That same point, kind of thing, that it all arrives at once, 12 inches from your line. Yeah, that is slightly to one side of the scale. So maybe you say, okay, cool, I will take Valdor, but he's not going to be in the hardest unit. He's going to be in a unit of these guys, and it's fairly minimal.
Yes, so, yeah. Tone that unit down, then suddenly he's not vulnerable, but he's not as absolutely horrifying to play against.
No, absolutely. How many vehicles? Again, the beauty of the list I played in Durham, there were 4 or 5 tanks on the board, but there was stuff running up the table at me. So again, I mean, if you've got everything, and I mean everything in vehicles, then none of your small arms fire can do anything from the opponent. And that's fair enough if that's if that's a tactic you want to do. But again, on the other side of it, you're just sitting waiting for your opponent to do something, so you're allowed to do something back. So maybe having targets that are available, knowing that, I mean, in some ways that's not necessary, and not all of these actually, when you're building these, not all of these are the best thing to do either, but they do create those negative game experiences, or can create those negative game experiences, should I say, because at the end of the day, the player as well is a major part of it.
Because I must admit, whenever I play the game and it's got a little bit one-sided, and you've seen the other person just get absolutely flattened, I don't actually think I've ever taken any enjoyment out of those games.
I think I've enjoyed being smashed more than opponents have enjoyed smashing me, because you get to a point sometimes where you're just like, wow, this is just happening. No. I'm going to see what I can do, even if it's just kill one unit. But yeah, I don't think from a fun kind of narrative style that you're getting a huge amount out of that game. From a competitive style, yeah, you got the satisfaction of, doing that. But that's most of the time in the Heresy, that's not what you're going for, or not what the event is trying to show off.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. But yeah, things like, okay, jet bikes are really good. We've worked that out. I'll take 1 unit of 3 jet bikes. Cool. That's enough. I'll take 1 shield captain. I don't need 2, and I'll knock him down to a 4-up save. That's enough. Yeah? It's little things. If you do that across 3 or 4 or 5 decisions across an army, you knock it back that 10, 15% into that realm where it's more enjoyable to play against. And I think as a player as well, I'm like, it's more of a challenge.
Yeah, I think there's not much, if you know you're taking an army that is literally going to walk across the table and take everything out in its path, there's no real tactics to that, and really what have you achieved at the end of it? Whereas if you have toned it down and you do, you have to really think about, and you still win your game, then you proved yourself to be a much better tactician than writing a really hard list.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have seen some people talking about this again recently, as I say, and Mike's list actually. Someone brought that up at one of the events, and I think there was a couple of games, I think against Joe, where there was a couple of dice rolls effectively that decided the game, because Joe had played to a certain way. Was it, if he doesn't get in here, actually, his army is small. He has got a Death Star. Again, don't Death Star. We said that. 1 character per unit is fine.
Yep.
We're all good with that. There's some other armies that can possibly do with that as well. If they do that kind of thing, they can't be everywhere at once. Now, we've said they have got actually quite a bit of speed in the army, but some of that speed is just to get you there, not to then redeploy. So if you've got an army which has a number of troops, things like using the speed bump of, okay, this unit's going to die next turn, so actually I'm going to march it towards the enemy. So he only moves 3 inches into combat, and then the dice roll out of the combat. So you're limiting how far they get across the table.
I think, because there's certain ones, like with Valdor, with his teleporting and all that sort of jazz. If you can force him to teleport where you want him to teleport, or where he thinks the biggest threat is, and you move something towards him and then move everything else away, it could really sort of scupper him for a couple of turns, maybe, or make it harder for them to sort of do that sort of just big sweep across the board.
Yeah, let him play with a unit. If you've got fearless units that and it's hard. It is hard with Valdor in a unit to know exactly how many wounds he's going to do. It's a lot usually, but if you've got a kind of like a 20-man thrall unit, there's a chance that you can hold the 2 rounds to hold him again in his turn. Even if it's one model, that's all you need to waste a turn of his. So it's those kind of things you have to look at. Now, a lot of armies aren't going to be able to do that, and that's fair enough. But if you've got a tactical squad, you've got a Rhino. If you've got a Rhino that's not doing anything, park it in the way. Yeah? Because it will slow them up. So you have to kind of use that. And particularly if you can take out those transports, then you've reduced their mobility a lot to get around the table. And obviously, that only really helps in missions where there are multiple objectives. In a mission where it's kill the enemy warlord, or it's 1 or 2 objectives, it's going to be much more difficult to do that. But I think we played War of Lies, actually. None of us ended up getting any objectives because the combats we were doing was so tight that I couldn't afford to be pushing towards any of his units at the end game, and he needed to make sure I was off objectives in his game, so he didn't have the resources to then go and get objectives himself.
Mm-hmm.
So you can play that against them as well, because at the end of the day, if you're playing an objective game, it's his troops you've got to kill.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And if you can keep
those troops,
you can keep 10 of your men alive on an objective that's worth a couple of points, and you can control those secondary objectives, then maybe all you need to do is kill his troops. Now, that's not easy sometimes, depending on how many they got, but I've seen armies with 4 troops units, I've seen armies with 2. So if they've only got 2 units of troops, then maybe it is worth just firing everything you've got into those 2 units till they're dead, and then trying to hold on to that one objective, however you need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think objectively based, that's where they're probably weakest, but on things they have to kill and things they have to, things to remove things from a board, they're very good at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think potentially as well, so if you're making an army designed to kill Space Marines, you might be worried about the enemy's Praetor, you might be worried about a Primarch, and you might have set up a kill system to deal with them. Maybe not the Primarch so much, but the special character of that level with a decent squad around them. It's very easy to kind of get stuck into, well, this is my dude that deals with their big threat. Well, against Custodes, I'd be very tempted to say, this dude who deals with big threats now just deals with normal dudes.
Yes.
Because he actually can kill them. And I can have enough left to go and kill another normal set of dudes. And it's worth more for you doing that. If your big thing's not as good as their big thing, then why are you putting it up against them? You want to get those matches going for you. You want his best thing fighting your worst things, and then your best things fighting his middle things. To get the most use out of them. But I think sometimes we get drawn. Obviously different players, different things, but we can get drawn into going, well, this is my dude with whatever you've armed them with, and his squad of ultra killy stuff, aiming them at the biggest target, go. It's like, well, actually the game's changed. You're bringing a knife to a gunfight this time, so you have to be aware of what you're doing with that. And
Definitely.
Yeah, and I would say one of the last things is, now I say my Mechanicum army has been built up with a lot of AP2 weapons in it, and that's because when I started building it, I was just seeing shed loads of Primarchs and Terminators, and we still do to an extent. And with Mechanicum, it's maybe a bit easier to get those AP2 weapons in. I'll grant you that. But with the amount of, and it sounds weird, we got a disproportional number of Talon players potentially in that mix, and I'm saying that because there are 18 legions, and 5 or 6 other armies we got now, and if you're going to a 40-player event like Ruination, there are 6 Talons players, then that's a disproportional amount. It's not huge, but it's disproportional. So, and the amount of Talons I've seen being built, I don't think it's a problem yet per se, but there is definitely the opportunity to go to an event where there are a few Talon players, like the Mechanicum in a way. So I think you should be actually now thinking in your list, what if I play Talons? I'm going to need some AP2 weapons in here. And AP2 weapons that maybe can't be dealt with straight away, because it's all very well having, a unit of 6 heavy support guys with las cannons, but actually Talons are probably going to deal with them all right. In fact, most armies do. So you need to kind of think of something that can do that. Something at the very least causes problems, because even you're not going to want to open up like some of your units that kind of fire, because they will eventually take models out.
Yes.
So, I know in that game I didn't have a transport for my Myrmidon Destructors with grav weapons. So he was like, right, well, they've got to die, because if I get within 18 inches of him with 4 of those guys, that's 16 AP2 shots coming into him.
Yeah, they are filthy, aren't they?
And they're beautiful for that. And yeah, Mechanicum have that unit, which is potentially very good in that circumstance. Don't get me wrong. I do understand that, but there are ways to kind of look at these Uber units, and the ways you can deal with them. Actually, sometimes they transpose over to dealing with the Primarch with the Terminators, or just the big unit of Terminators that come in the Spartan. So it's not like you're taking them for one role. It's like, yeah, when those red butchers get out and I give them a target to eat, what's my counter-attack unit? Well, actually, the things that kill red butchers will kill, slower, admittedly, Talons. So, it might be worth investing in a bit more strength 10 as well.
Yeah, I think that toughness 5 is a killer, isn't it? Because when you think thing. Like you said, power fist, you have your power fist and you think, that deals with Marines quite happily, but obviously then you've got a toughness 5 model and suddenly it's a case of 2 wounds.
And they've killed you first.
Yeah.
And absolutely the same. My Porphyrion with his strength 10, he wasn't hitting many models, but every failed invulnerable save was a dead model. Like, that's big, because it does weigh up. And if it's a case of taking, I don't know, Predators with autocannons, there's a lot of shots. Or Plasma. Yeah, Plasma does it. It's high enough strength that you're wounding them on 2 still, on the base stuff. And you're getting past their 2-up armour. And again, that might have been your Headhunter squad for the enemy's Warlord. But actually, if you can set up so that you can see one unit with them and you're protected from other units by use of tanks or terrain, then you can come out, kill one squad. Brilliant. Okay, let's redeploy it to kill another squad. So you just have to think that a little bit differently with that. But it's not easy. It's not easy. It's an interesting list of Talons. As I say, I think internally it's pretty awesome. I think within the context of other heresy armies, it just took a step too far. I don't think it's...
Yeah, it's difficult though, again, because obviously often when these rules are written, I think by Forge World or Games Workshop, when they write them, I don't think they're often looking at how a lot of players then just abuse them. I think they allow for a lot more self-regulation than possibly actually happens.
Yeah, so Laurie actually... I put up something about, a poll on Facebook about, should... competitive gaming in the heresy. And Laurie replied with a quote from Alan, which was like, you'd have to be mad to use these rules competitively. It's like, well, that's great, because that's Alan. But actually, a lot of people getting real enjoyment out of the tactical side of this game. And part of that is list writing and coming up with new ideas for combinations of units. And so that will happen. And humanity generally will start at one level and push forwards as well. So we will push the boundary. Oh, this didn't work quite that well that game. Okay, I'll get something better. That does happen a lot. So, yeah, it's an awkward one because they are writing a game that fits the way they play a lot of the time, which is ultra narrative. But it's hard. It's hard to be able to say to people, your narrative's not my narrative.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know if you can really do that because you do stand. And I say, we pulled out last episode, Max's army that he took to Sweden and got smashed with was a decent army in England. There's a fundamental difference between the two communities and the way they approach list building. And that's not a bad thing, that's just different. So, and I mean, could you imagine if a Swedish guy came over with one of the harder armies into our community? I think some people would be calling them out for being a win at all cost or whatever. And actually, well, no, that's the way they play the game over there. It's slightly harder. It's a scale. It's not a click point of different levels. It's a sliding scale of where you stand. And sometimes you don't even know how good it is until you get it on the table either. I mean, it's fairly obvious with the Talons they had some pretty good stuff. I remember reading, just the tanks, the jet bikes. There's a few things in there that stand out. But yeah, I think having more shots that can do a bit more is a good issue as well. I mean, as an event organizer, it becomes another level. I know we're going to get at least 2 or 3 Talons at Blood and Glory because I've had one list. I know someone else who's coming who's painting them, and I think I've seen someone else as well. And that pack is written unashamedly that I will do stuff, I will. And I'm going to try and make it, I will give bonuses to the opposition. But you don't want to push that too far. If I do, I do. And that, again, that pack says that, whatever. But how do you go about that within a narrative? It's quite tricky.
Yes. It's, again, you've got to be careful that you're not seen just to be picking on a certain type of army as well. That, I bought this and you're just going to punish me for it.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things is Custodes can only be loyalists as well. So they're all on one side.
Yes, of course, yes. You've got one big, massive tilt, haven't you?
So I can't turn around to say, oh, do you want to be on the traitor side for a game, really? Because I don't think many people are going to go along with that. Which is
Didn't demons do anything in particular to hurt them?
I don't really know. That book's... I haven't looked at that book in a long time. And even with the option to use them, most people do it within the confines of a word bearers list. From what I've seen, even though I allow a bit more expansion on that, but potentially there's potential for stuff to happen in that. And I'm sure there are other specific armies that can do certain things. I'm sure Magnus could have some fun, but then Magnus is an issue potentially if he's not, if the player's not regulated that within himself. So yeah, there are things. We'll have to look at who wants to play against them. And it depends on the player as well, obviously. We've talked about that many times. If the players come with the attitude of having fun, even with the harder list, it's not necessarily as bad as it could be. If a player's coming in has misunderstood what the event's about and is looking to win games, then that's a fundamentally different issue. But things like, I'm sure they would do well against knights, but knights might be able to, their manoeuvrability and the power level that they're at could be a counter to them, or give them a tough game. I haven't really played that to see, and then it will be a case of really seeing what can handle them. Some people were talking about real high numbers of air units, and again the manoeuvrability of avoiding a lot of
Yeah, I thought of something similar, whereas if you've got enough flyers and you can get into transports and just try and outmaneuver them and try and move away from those more grounded targets.
Yeah, and focus fire, yeah. Not being static for them to come at you.
Yeah, don't let them sort of come at you and decide how they're going to split your force up. Just keep manoeuvring it away and around. Try and outmaneuver them, and that could. I mean, if they've got some ground units, if they've got Contempt to Dread somewhere, or there's although they've got those transports that are fast skimmers, you could still with a flyer,
yeah,
get well away from them to try and limit their damage.
Yeah, and it's tough. And as an event organizer, I think they're. With all events I do, I'm trying to come up with ideas to balance games out a little bit, and not to make, I don't know if balance is the right way, but to keep it fun and interesting and engaging. And Talons is a potential one where it's very easy to go too far. So it needs to be written into the narrative and needs to provide a game that's decent without being the same game every time as well. Because I can take along a couple of knights and give them away as extra points. To the opposition, you get a free knight. But if that's happening every game, again, I'll be picking on Talons. And I've heard of, I think maybe in the Australian scene, some of the people talking about Talons get less points than everyone else. Again, where do you draw that line? Right, it's and if you do that, then the people who want to bring the more balanced Talons list are getting hurt for doing that. So,
yeah,
is that a right answer or not? I don't know. Potentially looking at my events, maybe forward going saying, okay, bring your army, but if you have extra points, bring it along as well, because there might be times where I allow you to do stuff. There might be, special ammunition. If people know they're going up against custodians, that they might be preparing themselves for it. But it's that balance. I say it's a fine balance, and I don't mind getting it wrong, but I don't want to punish people for bringing custodians, because it's very easy to see, and I've seen it happen a couple of times very recently. It's, oh, you're bringing Custodes, oh, you just want to win games. And it's like, well, actually, no. It's like, some of these people, you never know. Like, they could have been those people who were playing Heresy before there was a Heresy game, who had made their own custodians. You just don't know that. Yeah? Custodians are cool. People can like them because they're amazing. Talon of Horus only showed us, not Talon, Master of Mankind only showed us exactly how cool, even on top of the Talons the custodians we've seen in First Heretic and, the Garrow stuff and all that. Diocletian's awesome. Ra's awesome. These are really cool people. So, why would you not want to play them? For the first...
Yeah, I mean, those books sort of really well sort of indicate how good they are. And, how many times have you read a book and thought, I want to do an army of these guys?
The First Heretic, the moment in the cage fighting where it's essentially a chapter master going up against one custodian sergeant, and he lasts like 8 seconds or whatever it is. And
that was respectable.
Yeah, and the custodian's like, well done, he lasted 8 seconds. From that moment on, I'm like, these guys are the coolest. I want a whole army of them, So you can't just be looking at, it's 40k players coming into Heresy wanting to wipe up. It's like, well, should we look down on people who want to paint an army quickly? Not really. If their army's painted and looks good, does it matter how they do it? Or why they're doing it in that respect? Not really. If whatever event you're going to, play in the spirit of that event, that's fine. There is an issue if you're going to your game club, and again, we said this plenty. If you're going to the game club with your Custodes force, and everyone who wants to play, every week, they're like, can you tone it down a bit for this game? And you're like, no, I want to play this way. Well then, you've got to look at yourself on that respect. Yeah. But if you're bringing a Custodes list and you're like, these are really cool, this week, what are you bringing? I'll kind of adjust it. Or next week, do you want to go and see what you can do against my Custodes list? Or even, I'm bringing Custodes. Do you want to write an army list to face it?
Yeah, this is what will be in the army.
Yeah, roughly. You don't even have to give them all the things, but just to let them know that actually, rather than taking that force you would take to kill Space Marines, maybe you take that unit out and put in something that's a bit more designed to kill those troops. Because I say, Vorax putting a lot of fire out can do a lot of damage, but they're not a great unit. They're a good unit. They're not a great unit, but it's also quite funny when you tell them you're going to kill Valdor with them. You're going to kill him with rotor fire, because they suddenly have this feeling that they're just going to fail 3 or 4 dice. Yeah. And all of a sudden it's going to happen. But yeah, there's lots of things that can be done. A lot of it might not need to. And that comes down to the person playing the Talons. For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And as we get more options for the sister, we've got the guns, we've got the pistols out now, haven't we? And all that. We've got the transport, maybe a few more of them slotted in as more than just objective grabbers. Would be cool. But we'll see. Got any more ideas, any more thoughts?
Not really. I think we've covered it pretty much to death. It's who you play, I think, is the key. If you play your mates and your mate's got one, you can always have a conversation and say, look, this is not going to be fun for either of us. And you can tone it down. And if that person that you don't know walks into your gaming club or is at an event and you look at it and think, well, this is not going to be any fun, you just talk to them about it.
Yeah. I say I feel more tricky as an event organiser, but that is, I've written a pack and I can always turn to that and say, says it right here.
Yes.
If you want home games, don't bother coming. I'm sorry, a Warlord Titans appeared on the other table. Maybe not that, I'd have to buy and paint one. But yeah, there's things that can be done. Maybe good old Zardu Layak will come back and start casting some more magic spells to try
seriously.
to try and affect them. But it's a tricky one, and I think I might have to talk to a few people who play the Custodians to see what they think will help, because it's all very well from one side of the table saying, oh, if you took this away, took that away, but sometimes a small insignificant thing can actually change the way an army plays, and that might take away the enjoyment of that player, or it might actually push them too far. So, it's got to be done sensibly.
Definitely.
But there we go. We talked a lot about the Talons, the Custodians specifically. Let us know if you've got any ideas, you've had any issues or any kind of ways you worked out a way of resolving exactly to not have those issues, as it were. Awesome. We'll go listen to some music and then come back and close out the show. There we go. That's another show done. Just as we close up, we've got a few more little bits and pieces. So Neil very happily wants to bring up the share prices.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye on the old share prices, as I do have some shares, and I've noticed them going up again of late, which only can bode well. And I think obviously we're starting to see a bit of the effect of 40k now.
Yeah, so
coming in.
Yeah, we talked before about that first share price was. That boost was their report, wasn't it, from the period beforehand, so it hadn't actually included new 40k. Well, now we're starting to see new 40k selling going out the door like rubbish off a shovel. And you're tied into this, you're saying that your Instagram's just absolutely chock full of Nurgle.
Yeah, I even put a post up on Twitter that every time I go on my Instagram, all I see is Mortarians and just loads of Death Guard.
Yep, there's shed loads of Mortarians everywhere. And Nurgle's always been a favourite kind of army, the modelling and the painting things. I'm not a fan of it, but I understand why people are. And we've got another wave of releases coming out for them, or that are already out now on the release date of the new tanks and a few new characters and stuff like that. So much stuff that's coming out that seems to be selling very well, and then we've got the buzz around Shadespire seems to be pretty big, and after that we've got Necromunda, which I can only imagine is going to again sell like hotcakes, even if it's just for people buying it actually for one of the first times for the tiles and selling the models, because if you want to do Zone Mortalis on the cheap, be getting those tiles. I was going to talk about this at the start, and I forgot to. So Necromunda, as we knew it, used to be, cardboard terrain and whatever, 3D terrain. Well, to keep costs down on that, and because we've already got all this Shadow War Armageddon terrain out, they're not making any new terrain. They're providing boards, and those boards are basically the Zone Mortalis boards in 2D. The same layouts. Yes. So what you've got is Necromunda's going to be, I don't know what, 50, 60 quid maybe? 80, maybe up to 80. 60 to 80, I've no idea, because it's got no terrain in it, it's confusing me. But to do that, you're getting 2 gangs and all those board tiles. So maybe a couple of them. I don't know how many are coming in the box, I haven't looked at it yet. But you can get a Zone Mortalis, ship battle area. It's not 3D, but you can still play on it. And potentially
it just
you can
means
build
that if you're looking to get into that at a minimal cost, like you fancy a bit of Zone Mortalis, you can just buy that and away you go.
Or if you want to run a Zone Mortalis event, then maybe those. And what you might be lucky is there might be them on, because again, I'm looking at getting Necromunda. I'm old school. I like having the terrain like we used to. Haven't seen the rules yet, but I can guess that I'm going to want to play the game that way. So people like me will put their boards like they did with Betrayal at Calth and Prospero. They're going to put those boards on eBay just to try and get anything back on them. An extra $5 is an extra $5. So you might be seeing a lot of those come. But yeah, But Necromunda itself is going to sell well. Shadespire is going to sell well. This November, when they bring out, early December, when they bring out their Christmas bundles, I'm guessing they're going to fly out the door as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Did you see the Battlefield in a box?
Yeah, I haven't looked at it properly, but yeah.
So obviously another GW release that they're bringing out, but they've got some cool little bits of like wall terrain that comes with the set.
Yep.
And again, if you were doing Zone Mortalis, they'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're all just sort of little straight sections as a corner and bits and pieces. So you had a few of those. You could take those flat tiles and then just maybe build up a few bits if you wanted to.
Yeah, there's so many different ways of doing it. We're getting amazing products coming out all the time. Yeah, you're spoiled for choice. You really are spoiled for choice. Again, I've seen other people talking about how to keep up, and you just can't. You've got to let it go now. You've just got to choose what you're going to play and crack on with it. My 40k stuff hasn't seen light for a few weeks. I will get around to painting a bit of it at some point, I'm sure, but I've accepted it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I got really excited about a new 40k, but I haven't actually been able to do anything with it. And Heresy, although it's gone quiet, I feel as though I'm in my nice little corner, like an old man sitting there, not having to worry about all the pace that's going on with all the other hobbies.
Yeah. There's been a few people saying similar things. No, it's really good, really good. But talking about Heresy, we've got Blood and Glory still coming up. So first weekend of November, still tickets available. We've got plenty of people coming, loads of room for lots more. There's a lot of other stuff going on. There's Shadespire event, Age of Sigmar event, 40k events. There's an awesome, it's called Warhammer Achievements, or it was anyway. And it's more about earning achievements like Xbox type style achievements. So you've scored 100 kills, you get an achievement point for it, things like that. And Steve's made up his own tables for that, which are looking awesome. We've got seminars going on from GW. We've got Warhammer TV there as well. So if you are in that area, and even if you can't come, it might be worth just popping down and having a look around. And that's at the Roundhouse in Derby on the first weekend. I think it's 4th and 5th of November, this Saturday and Sunday. So, yeah, go and look at the show notes, and there'll be a link to the website for tickets and information. And then you may have seen posted around the London GT is coming back May 18th that weekend, and I'll be running the London Heresy there again. They're expanding on what they did last year, still talking a few bits to be finalised, but we're hoping to have a really big event. I've been talking to people who've been saying they're going to save the date. I think the Geno 5.2 guys were hoping to get down. Maybe it was them. The Greetings from the Warp guys were talking about coming down, and hopefully we'll get the Sons of Heresy guys because it's pretty much on their doorstep. So we'll get all those people down as well.
Will they get there by catching one bus or something?
I think they're one tube station away. I think Johnny's one tube station away. And Jason's within very easy walking distance of Johnny. So, yeah, it makes it a lot easier. Still probably turn up late, but but I expect nothing less of cuddles. So, that's going to be really good fun. Just starting to sort out a pack for that because, I need to do things now because it takes me so long to do them. But yeah, there's for all the talk we gave, there are a lot of Horus Heresy events going on and a lot planned for 2018. I've been talking with a few of the other guys who organise events in the UK, and yeah, there's a lot being planned and some really cool stuff as well. So we'll keep pushing it, and then hopefully you guys will keep coming. Yeah, and we'll have good fun on the tables.
Indeed, we will.
Right, I think that's about all. So we'll do a normal. You can send us feedback. Greg at theimperialtruth.com.
Neil at theimperialtruth.com.
And Instagram, where Neil might follow you but won't paint anything and post it.
Yeah, at Neil Paints on Instagram and on Twitter and pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah, and at Child of Fang on Twitter and Instagram. if you if you do if you do enjoy the show, let your friends know. If you leave us a review on iTunes, that's wonderful. If you listen somewhere else and you can leave a review there, that's wonderful as well. It all helps. It all allows people to see what we're about and lets them know that it might be worth them listening to. You know, some of them may even like it. Not many.
Not many people.
Not many. It's all good. Neil's been disappointing people. It's fine. Wonderful stuff. I think that's about it, unless you've got anything else to add.
Nothing for me.
Good. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.